rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening.
We have a public hearing, Posy 229 Sheer Hill Road. Mike?
All of my comments have been addressed. I spoke to Rich, and most of his were addressed. He had no objection to opening the public hearing.
Okay. Pat?
I have no comments on this regrading permit, Mr. Chairman.
I'll open it up to the board here. Jack, by the way, one of the things the board left of this with the last meeting was the soil that was already brought in. Has
Right,
that been
correct.
verified, it's clean and certified?
I spoke to Bob Posy after the meeting. We didn't know what kind of fill that was. Bob said it was item 4. I told Rich that it's item 4. So he said, well, send us the certificate of origin or where he got it from. I sent him that. He said, take some pictures. I took some pictures, and he was satisfied with it. I sent him the pictures last week, and he was satisfied with it. So we don't have to sample item 4 for the chemicals.
Any comments?
So it's
So I don't-
whatever's gonna go on.
Was there anything,
Yeah, the new material have the manifests, yes.
did Rich have a report on that?
He does not.
He doesn't mention it in his report. I mean, that's my concern, is it's not addressed in here.
Well, that was his preview. He doesn't have a report for this meeting, apparently.
He sent an email on this meeting saying he wasn't gonna do a memo, that he had no real issues with opening and.
Opening the
But
public
he
hearing,
had
that's right.
nothing.
Oh, guys, Rich sent a memo. I have a memo here for the Sheer Hill landfill regrade from Rich.
From today?
Yeah,
April 5th?
April 23rd, 2019.
No, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I saw an email from him saying he wasn't
Do you
gonna.
have it, Ray?
That
I
was
have it
the-
right
I think
here,
that was for
Can we,
Taco Bell.
What does it say?
can we present that memo?
Yeah, can you give it, I guess, Pat, can you? Sure.
So Jack's memo has 2 comments. The map provided,
Rich?
I'm sorry, Rich, sorry. Old habit. The map provided has been updated, however, there's no revision date on the map. And number 2, a note on the drawing indicates that the propane tank will be relocated. The relocation and any associated disturbance must be provided on the drawing. He doesn't speak to the fill at all on this memo.
Well, I think the board still has an issue or concern with the fill, that the fill is gonna be checked out. And, I personally like to speak to Rich about that, but I'm not sure what the rest of the board feels. Now, Pat, Jack mentioned something about item 4 does not need to be checked.
The board doesn't want? I'm
Jack
sorry.
mentioned that item 4 does
So
not
that,
need to
so
be verified.
if it's entirely item 4, that's what it is, item 4, so there's no,
It's not, if it's not fill from some unknown
So that's
location,
the
if it's item
question.
4 from a purveyor
Right.
of fill, of materials.
Right.
then-
It was from Manpack Building Materials, and it's dated February 6th, 2019. He paid, I can't read it, but $600-700 for the amount of item
Can
4
we-
that was delivered.
Can we see that?
Oh.
Was that submitted to Rich too? That was part of what you sent to Rich, right? Okay.
And there were pictures. Here, I'll show you. That was
It doesn't still speak of the certification of the fill or the quality of it.
and, I would only say, Mr. Chairman, that you would typically rely on the town engineer to confirm that. I don't know that we have the technical expertise
No.
to confirm that tonight necessarily.
And unfortunately, Rich is at the town meeting.
Well, I mean, he prepared that memo after he received these materials, so, but in any case, I mean, you can open the public hearing, close the public hearing, hopefully put this forward for a resolution at the next meeting, and have Rich addressed the board at that time relative to the item 4. I mean, as far as he discussed with me, there's no question about the item 4. People bring in item 4 everywhere, and they don't spend $500 to $1,000 to sample item 4. It was came from a local supplier. Anyway, that's my story.
I personally don't feel comfortable without speaking to Rich about this.
I'll agree with that. I think there should be some kind of certification or confirmation from Rich.
And, you know, look, this, Mr. Pazzi brought the fill in unbeknownst to the town. I'm not gonna rush it through because Rich is not here.
Well, you have a memo from Rich which responds to my submission, and it doesn't say anything about the fill. So that means to me that
what
he's
our concern is.
satisfied with
Right,
the fill.
but that's the concern. I mean,
I'd rather him
I mean,
say in his
but he
memo
would've
that
put
it's
something
item
in there if
4
he
and it was
didn't-
clear, it's fine.
But
But
if
then, can we at least open and close the public hearing, because I don't think.
The
there's
public
any-
hearing is open.
Oh, okay.
We're not gonna close it.
Mike, is there a maximum amount of fill that needs to, if somebody brings in, let's say, 100 yards of fill, what's the number where they have to come before the board?
There is no minimum. What we've used is the 5,000 square foot of disturbance. It has nothing to do with the cubic yards that you bring in. We have not used that. There's nothing in the code that speaks of a minimum or max.
So, can I just add, so Rich did send it, I found the email, I didn't see the memos, but in his email, Rich did say, attached to the engineering department's memorandum of support of the April 23rd meeting, please note that I will be at the town board in Carmel, will not be able to attend. For Shield Hill regrading, all comments have been addressed. The minor ones I provided should not hold up or keep the public hearing open. He did write that in his email. That's what I saw. When I saw that, I didn't think he didn't put the memo
Do you
together.
have Rich's,
I printed out the memo itself, I didn't print out the email.
Yeah, that's what he says in the email, right?
Yeah.
I'm just reading the email language.
I mean, if the board feels they want to keep it open, you're allowed to. I mean,
I
keep it
understand
open,
that.
obviously. That's your choice.
But I don't think there's any question. Rich is satisfied. This was your concern. You raised this, the board,
Right,
not
right.
Rich.
we asked Rich to confirm that the fill is clean.
Well, you asked Jack to
Right,
provide.
Jack to provide the
evidence.
data to that, and the data has not been provided.
Well, Jack did provide Rich that
But not-
data, but Rich didn't respond to you.
Not
that-
we don't have any certification presented to us
Yeah.
that says, yes, this is clean
Yeah.
soil. We've had issues with soil that's not clean. We have 100 dump trucks being removed from the site because the soil's contaminated.
My suggestion would be to keep the public hearing open and request an update from Rich with respect to the concerns that you raised at the last meeting. A resolution can be prepared, you close the public hearing and vote on it.
I'll give it.
At the next session.
Yeah, so then you don't really lose any time anyway, right? Because you have to come back for a
That's fine.
resolution, right? That sound fair? I think that's a pretty fair.
And Jack, I will personally call Rich tomorrow.
That's fine.
I will follow through on this myself because I want to, I'm not trying to slow you down,
No,
I'm really not, but we had a
No,
bad
that seems
issue
like
a
that
couple
seems like
months
a good
ago.
compromise,
And you
right?
won't-
This
you
way,
won't
you gotta
lose
come
any
back
time
and
then if
do
that's the
resolution,
case.
You're not really losing anything, right?
Right, that's fine. That's fine.
That's fine. That
Thank
makes
you.
sense, right?
All right, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for working with us.
Mr. Chairman, I want to see if there's anyone here from the public that wants
Oh.
to
Yeah.
speak. Hey, Jack?
Before you run.
Is there anyone here that'd like to be heard on this public hearing?
For the Pazzi application?
Thanks, Jack.
There's a public hearing.
So for the record, we're keeping this public
We're
hearing
going to leave
open
the public hearing open.
Till the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
until our next meeting.
Don't really lose anything, right? We
No.
can keep our cover tail.
Taco Bell, 101 Stoneley Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Darius Shefazada. I'm an attorney with the law firm Harris Beach. Here with me is Paul Dumont from John Meyer Consulting and two principals of Chi Carmel LLC. We're here for a...
Let me just ask first the consultants if they have something, and we'll get
Sure.
back to you.
Yeah.
Mike?
The applicant proposes to change from the existing Friendly's restaurant to a Taco Bell fast food and the second proposed restaurant, and that's unclear if it's gonna be fast food or regular restaurant. I gave the entire law for the fast food. Provide floor plans and elevations, I need them to confirm the parking and the use. Provide detail of the trash enclosure, provide detail of all signage. The zoning table needs to be corrected, unchanged is not acceptable. If it's unchanged and it complies, that's fine. If it's unchanged and doesn't comply, you will need a variance. And if you got the variances, please put the notes on the plan so it's crystal clear. The variances are required for lot width and building area, and the project should be referred to the ECB for comments.
Pat?
You'll get a all list of all these comments, Derek.
Good, I didn't get them all
Yeah,
down.
you'll have to write down. I'll give you a list of everything when you're done.
I was
I
quick.
see him frantically writing over there, you will get it all.
Rich didn't have comments for this yet. So a couple of things on this, as Mike indicated, this is a conditional use. There are 3 criteria they must comply with. They do, so they meet the conditional use criteria. The Friendly's building, as you know it, Taco Bell is proposing to utilize half that space. So the other half of the building is a tenant to be determined in the future. The parking requirement that's been calculated for the Taco Bell is, I think, 45 spaces. I think they're providing that number of spaces on the site, which leaves nothing for the additional use. So that's a concern if that second space is ever utilized. The parking lot's being reconfigured. So now there'll be a one-way circulation around the right and left side of the building, and that's being done to incorporate a drive-through into the building as well. When you enter the driveway, you're forced to turn to the right. It's unclear, Paul, if there's a curb that channels you or if it's just pavement striping. Ideally, we'd like to have a curb to make it a little more definitive. Same thing with the drive-through aisle, if it's just painted or if there's a curb. And that relates to the way the drive-through gets used. And the biggest concern with respect to the drive-through is we've had this before, extensive queues become traffic impediments. So if you get into the queue and you're just waiting too long for your tacos and you want to scoot out, that creates a problem. So you're either in or out. The way to prevent that is to have a curb. So once you're in the drive-through lane, you're stuck in the drive-through lane. You got to stick it out. So that's a clarification on the drawing. On the right-hand side of the plan, you'll note that the parking is 90 degrees, then it goes to angled parking, then back to 90 degrees. When you have a contiguous lane of parking, ideally you'd want to have the same orientation of parking spaces the whole way through. It gets tight there because of the drive-through lane. That's why they have angled them. But if there's any way to maintain a singular orientation, that's preferable. The drive-through queue, with respect to that, if you can provide us with some data from other Taco Bells to demonstrate that that is sufficient. It looks as though they have a good length of distance to support the queue. But again, the worst thing is to have that last car backed up so that no traffic can get around the outside of the building. So Dunkin' Donuts, that's a real concern, probably less of a concern for Taco Bell, but can you give us evidence from what some of the other restaurants are? Back to the shared use of the building, it's likely Taco Bell has certain branding requirements. You now assume the role of the architectural board as well, so are we dealing with half a building with respect to its facade? You have always tried to deal with the building uniformly, so will the building be treated as a single unit or half a loaf, basically, with just the Taco Bell, and then something generic or not done at all on the second side of the building? They're redoing the parking lot, milling it, and repaving it. There's a wetland and a stream behind the property, so we do want the ECB to take a look at this. They have some there's not a lot of space for landscaping, but they've done their best. What I would also suggest is the frontage along Stoneleigh Avenue to be landscaped as well to address just the aesthetic impact of it. We want to make sure this is done correctly. Site lighting and signage detail, we would need to see some details about that. And with respect to, there's a new trash enclosure in the back. Is that the single enclosure that will address recycling and food waste and the grease trap and everything else that's associated with the restaurant? Or are there other areas that are also going to be needed? If so, that might encroach into parking spaces, so that needs to be clarified as well.
Thanks, Pat.
So it sounds like you know what we're trying to do. So let me have Paul come up from JMC and walk you through the site and what we're planning to do and how we think it works, and then we'll try to answer some of Pat's questions today if we can. If not, we'll come back next month. What we'd like tonight, if we can, to refer to the environmental board tonight, if that's possible. And if possible, we'd like, if you can schedule a public hearing tonight for the next meeting, would be great too. Sure.
Do you know if you have those variances that we talked about?
Thank you, Darius. Regarding the variances, I have the site plans from the original Friendly's restaurant. From what I understand,
I'm
Pat.
sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Sorry,
Yeah.
for the record, Paul Dumont. I'm a senior designer at JMC. We are the civil engineers on the project. Regarding the variances, I believe when the Friendly's restaurant was originally constructed and approved, there were 2 variances obtained for lot width and minimum building area. Pat, we can take a look at that, but Rose had sent us the record plans, and we had taken a look at that. So, but Mike, we will fill in the table.
Yeah, just put it on the map, so this way it's clear. Put an asterisk, variance granted 1976, whatever it was, and
Okay.
then we know.
Regarding the improvements that are proposed to the building, the project architect is working on developing the floor plans and the signage package, so we will be submitting that to your board, hopefully before we come back before you, but as soon as possible. Regarding the site plan and the exterior improvements that we're proposing, they're generally minor in nature. The most significant improvement that we are proposing is the addition of a formal drive-through lane to the site. As some of you may know, the building has always had a drive-through lane. When it was a Friendly's restaurant, it's my understanding that it was operated as an ice cream window. So really what we're doing is delineating and constructing a clear drive-through lane, which will help with the circulation of the site. Pat's comment regarding the striping of the drive-through lane and the way that's done, the striping that is in the front of the property that identifies the one-way flow, we could certainly do that with a curb. That's not a problem. The queuing, the way it's configured, the menu board location is approximately here. So cars, at this point, when a car is here, they're at the menu board, they're essentially committed to ordering into the drive-through. Cars further behind that position, we would like to remain striped, and that will give, as you said, Pat, that will give people, if they don't want to commit, they can just go over the striping and exit the drive-through lane.
Go to McDonald's.
I'm sorry.
Go to McDonald's instead of Taco Bell.
So, with regard to the way that the space is shaped up, the reason that we oriented the spaces in that way and reconfigured them was because with the addition of the formal drive-through lane, we were not able to maintain compliant backup aisles. So we shifted those spaces to angled so that, if someone was in the queue at that point, people and someone was parked in that space perhaps, they would have room to back up.
That's the point also, that distance is not a lot. So someone theoretically is backing into a car that's in the queue for the drive-through.
You're saying even with the angled spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 12 feet maybe, something like that.
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we'll get that for you.
It's probably technically sufficient, but operationally, it's a little tight.
Understood.
Excuse me, the
Yep.
5 spots to the top right,
Yep.
would they be better served if they were angled?
I was just going to say, with the way that the parking space reconfiguration shaped up, the site previously had 55 parking spaces, and with the incorporation of the angled spaces and the drive-through lane, we lost 10 spaces, so we're proposing 45. We could certainly look at, along that whole bay, continuing the angled spaces. It would result in a loss of further parking spaces, but the site is overparked with regard to the zoning code, and we could take a look at that.
I just think that could be a pinch point for traffic flow.
Yep.
People coming around, either people leaving the drive-through, deciding not to go, and then people trying to pull into that configuration. You could get a backup there.
Understood. Okay. We'll take
And
a
what are
look
your
at that.
plans for the other half of the building? I mean, that's,
The other half of the building, they do not have a tenant confirmed yet. They believe it's going to be a food use, but that's not confirmed. But I have run some numbers on the parking, and, you know, if they decided to put another 40-seat restaurant there or a retail use, the site would comply with the parking code. So I think, Pat, we can just maybe clarify that in the table a little better. But we're confident that whatever use, you know, whatever tenant ends up coming on board will have enough parking on site.
And you're not gonna change the elevation of the front of this building?
We are not.
So, yeah, so I guess the floor plan will tell us how you're gonna get into the right side, right?
Right, the plan now is to have the door along the front, on the right of the building.
Could you tell me how?
But there is no door there now, right, on the right? is there?
Correct.
Right,
Yeah,
so
the architectural plans will
That's
show.
what I'm saying, so you're gonna change the elevation of the front a little bit, right, somehow, I'm guessing, right? The front
Would you mind
is-
pointing
At least
to
have a
where it
door,
would be?
I think,
That-
Right?
You're talking about the
We've-
look, not the elevation
Okay.
height, you're talking about the look of it.
You know, so
Okay,
we have
sorry,
architectural-
engineering
right,
mind.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. I knew, that's
responsibility,
what.
right, we have to get off of the plane
Understood,
and get
understood.
vertical, right?
Yes,
So-
and the project architect, as I understand, is developing that for your
Right, so
review.
that front elevation's gonna be
Yes.
important, right?
Yep.
In general, I think this is
Sorry.
not a bad-looking building, but whatever you're gonna introduce to that right side, we're gonna want it to kind of be in that
Correct.
same context, right?
Yep.
The kind of colonial look that this building can have.
Just to wrap up on the drive-through topic, so also, I'm sorry, did I
Yeah, no,
interrupt you?
before we get off of the parking, I'm just a little concerned. Our consultants told us that the use for the Taco Bell alone would require the 45 spaces.
So the parking requirement, as Mike knows, can tell you better than I, it's twofold. It's based on the number of seats in the restaurant or the area devoted to patron use. They didn't define the area for patron use, so the 45 numbers for the entire square footage of the restaurant, which probably includes the kitchen and service areas. So that would be deducted. So we don't know what the number is until they give us that information.
So once the floor plans are developed, you know, we'll run these numbers and we'll incorporate it into the site plan calculation, just so everyone is clear.
Okay.
Just to wrap up the drive-through lane topic, also with the addition of the drive-through lane and the reconfiguration of the parking spaces, we've had an opportunity to create a landscaped island here on the plan. This will reduce the impervious area on site by approximately 1,100 square feet, and it just helps to delineate the drive-through a little better and also provide an area for landscaping. We're proposing to mill and resurface the parking lot. As Pat said, the pavement is in disrepair, so that'll be getting paved.
The entire parking lot, correct?
We're proposing to mill and resurface the entire parking lot. We're going to end up doing some pavement corings out there, and depending on what we find, you know, we might just do top coat on some areas and mill other areas, but in the end, you know, the whole site will be getting a fresh top coat. We are removing the existing trash enclosure and rebuilding a trash enclosure in its place. That, as I understand, will serve the whole site. Pat, there is a grease trap in the front of the building. That's what those manholes are, right in front of the sidewalk. So the trash enclosure in the back will be utilized for trash and recycling for the building. And also like to note that a wetland permit is required for the work that we're doing there, as it's within 100 feet of that stream. It is, I believe, a Class 3 wetland as defined in your code, and we have had a wetland consultant go out to the site and delineate those wetlands, and the surveyors are going out this week or next week to pick up and field locate those flags, so that'll be incorporated into our plans going forward. We're proposing accessibility improvements to the site. The existing handicap parking spaces, drop curb and ramp, and the sidewalk that serves the building now is not compliant with regard to the slopes that are the maximum slopes that are permitted for accessible routes. So we're proposing to rebuild that sidewalk and bring those slopes into compliance. And the last thing is just some landscaping improvements on site. We'll be planting some trees, shrubs, ground covers, and some hardscape in the pervious areas that we do have on site in order, to beautify the site and make the most of those areas that we do have. And we will be incorporating some plantings along the frontage, although, we will make sure to keep, those plantings low for sight distance and visibility and such. So that's the summary of what we're doing on the site. Just like to note that we are not expanding the building footprint. We're staying within the existing extents of the parking lot. And we'll be working on addressing those comments. And as Darius said, we hope that your board would refer us to the Conservation Board and potentially set the public hearing for the next meeting.
What about signage? What do you have planned for signage?
So the project architect is working on developing the sign package, and we will be submitting that as soon as it's available.
Do you anticipate a pylon sign in addition to building signs?
Yeah, I believe the Friendlies had a sign
On the corner, yes.
on the plan, so we'll be doing something similar there.
You mentioned that there's gonna be some facade renovations, and as Dave mentioned, we play the role of the architectural review board
Understood.
also.
Yeah, understood.
So what kind of materials will be used?
I'm not sure.
I think we
All
need
that
some
information.
rendering. I mean, it's a really important spot downtown for
Understood.
us.
Yep.
I think we'd like to see some sort of renderings. We've gone through
Especially
two
that front
different
one.
sites, you know?
Absolutely.
Right in
Yep.
that area, McDonald's has a nice renovation. The gas station, convenience store's coming along, and this is right all in
Yeah.
that same triad, kind of, so.
Yeah, like I said, they're developing those things. It's our hope that when we return to you, we'll have those things for your review. But in the meantime, we'll be working with the Conservation Board to process the wetland permit.
Forgive me, but the drive-through window is there, right? It's a drive-through window on
Yes.
the building?
Yes, yep.
I don't think everyone.
Ice cream
I don't
only.
think everyone through the private premise
Yeah,
drive-through window.
I moved up in '92, I think, and it was not used then.
Yeah, I don't remember ever driving through there,
Yeah.
Oh, they used it. It was just for ice cream, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't a lane, it was just
I
a
never
window.
remember
window.
it, yeah.
Yeah. It's on that left side.
No, I know where it is,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've seen it, I know, yeah.
So I just raised the point, to Anthony's point, so your architect should see the plans for Cocoa Farms on the adjacent property and what McDonald's did. There is some continuity between those two designs, so as Anthony
Okay.
said, this should fit into that character.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure to, Pat, we'll coordinate and I'll make sure to get that information to the architect so they incorporate that into their design.
Just two things. I think, was it Cocoa Farms, don't they also have there was some discussion, sidewalk and crosswalk or something?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yep,
So, but not on this side.
no, on the other
Right.
side.
Other side,
other side.
Route 6.
So, I guess the only reason I bring it up, I wonder if it's warranted here or not, or if there's any plan for any such thing?
The sidewalk along the frontage there in the county right-of-way seems to be new to me, Pat. I wasn't sure if that was part of a recently approved development, but it is in good shape, and,
So that sidewalk was part of the,
A realignment of Stoneleigh Avenue and Route 6.
Yep. and the correction of that drainage issue when CVS came before you and so forth. So that's been in sort of a year or so of ongoing improvement.
So that brings me to my next question. What, if any, drainage structures are associated with the parking lot?
Okay, so with regard to stormwater management on-site, the site is served by 2 drain inlets. There's one on this corner of the property and one on this corner of the property. And the whole site is pitched generally
To the front?
this way out to
Yep.
Stoneleigh. And essentially, I don't know if you noticed, the edges of the parking lot are curved a little bit. Those serve to kind of keep the stormwater in sight, convey it to the drainage structures that are on site, and ultimately to the county right-of-way and the state right-of-way. We are not proposing any modifications to that system. With the creation of the approximately 1,100 square foot landscaped area that will now be pervious, there will be a reduction in stormwater runoff from the site during peak storms. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I just know that area
It does,
low,
Colin. I think
prone, low spot, and
when I think Rich gets his arms around this a little bit better, whether that's adequate or not to begin with is a question.
Just like to note, that there are no drainage issues on the property that we're aware of.
To piggyback on Carl a little bit, right, so we talking about that Cocoa Farms and a crosswalk going across Route 6 to the plaza, right? Did that got incorporated into that?
It did.
Into that, so does it make sense here to, kind of go with that flow? Because if you're coming out of, right, the development on the hill, right, you would have a spot to walk across the street.
Yeah, no
Is
doubt
that
about
something
it.
that we can kind of at least look at here?
I think so.
Yeah, you know
and-
what, so when we did the Cocoa Farms, we had that developer look at getting, from Cocoa Farms, the gas station, across to the shopping center.
Okay.
So this would be a nice little continuation if we could take, when people come off, the few people that do walk up that hill, if they could get across Stoneley, is Stoneley a county road? I'm not sure. Probably be
Stoneley
easier.
Avenue is a county road.
Yeah, it might be easier today to go through a state road, which is a much more difficult process, I'm assuming. That maybe we could get a crosswalk there, just if even the painted lines, right, just a place for, again, I'm not sure, I'm just asking to maybe look at it.
I think there's a crosswalk a little further down,
I
though.
thought there was, yeah, that's why I asked the question, I think
I
there's
think
a
it's-
crosswalk
I
at
could
the
look at it.
intersection.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I'm just piggybacking off of Carl. It's a
Yeah,
good-
no, I'm
good
just saying,
thought, right?
if there is one, I don't think you'd want another one, because you're gonna cross to nothing.
Yeah, I'm
nothing
just
on the
curious,
south side.
just thinking about that
Yeah,
flow
you're
coming
gonna
down,
walk.
right, if this is a spot, I'm not sure, I don't know.
And even if you go, where would you go? Where would you, yeah.
Right,
So it doesn't make sense, yeah, I'm not,
because
Picking
they're
up on some
already
other
on this
stuff.
side of the road if they wanted to get to.
My
They
point
would
of
cross
question
the
was,
line
where
before
they're
6
proposing
into the
one, I'm not
shopping
sure we
center, right?
want one there.
That's exactly right.
Wouldn't they, if they were gonna cross into the shopping center, wouldn't they cross at the light into the plaza?
Right,
This is an older picture, but you got these,
yeah, I don't think
crosswalk here,
that,
and
that's
then a
a,
crosswalk.
Yeah, the sidewalk goes back down to the crosswalk by Pup Plaza.
yeah, it's a busy enough intersection, and the island creates a flow that's unusual in some ways.
To
so
begin
I-
with, that's right.
But
I
the
don't want
sidewalk
another
comes from here all the way over to it, so that's, and past, all the way to,
Yeah, there's no
Where,
way.
you know, it's kind
to
of,
the retreat.
No, I was just trying to think out loud, my feet are a little bit.
So that, it does make it all the way to the retreat. to
Yeah,
the
it
driveway.
doesn't make much sense, straight,
Okay.
just got me thinking.
Any other comments? So, there's quite a bit that needs to be answered, right? I think our concerns are multi-tenant, you're gonna have another business in there hopefully. So anything that you do on the site, architecturally, for instance, should include the whole site, right? Because it's gonna be our responsibility to look at it. We'd like to see some renderings of that.
architectural elevations.
Yeah, architectural elevations. Has any problem sending this to the ECB, knowing it's gotta come back to us, and then we can,
No, going to the ECB is fine. I
Yeah.
would not recommend scheduling a public hearing yet, with so
absolutely
many issues open.
great.
Yeah, you didn't even see what the building looks like yet.
Right, we're too soon, I know you want it, we're
Okay.
too soon, there's a lot work to do, but not to speed it, not to slow it down, we can send it to the
That being said, Sharon,
ECB.
this board meets every 2 weeks, right? Not like most boards, but I think it's a month. So if you can get back here in 2 weeks and answer some of these questions, then we can
Understood,
certainly schedule a
understood.
public hearing. Right, if you can, if you can get it
Speak to
done.
Rose,
Make sure you have
but
your
make sure
architect.
you're prepared, right?
Just,
You can meet with Mike and Pat and Rich ahead of time, and if you are prepared, then come back, if not, obviously
But if
don't.
you can, it's one thing about this board, it meets every couple of weeks, but most of them meet once a month, right? So you kind of lose time. So you can pick up a little.
I think you got a little bit
Yeah.
of work to do on this architectural work for us, and as Anthony mentioned, the renderings, the elevations.
the building has some character to it, so it should be
Yeah.
fairly easy for you to.
Yeah, it's a nice building, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't muck it up too much, it should be good. Okay, crazy. Yeah.
Those are-
I think, I'm with Anthony, I think it's a pretty nice building all in all,
I
right?
think it's,
It kind of fits, so just
It fits the characteristics
stay in the
of that
character,
building.
you'll be okay.
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 Thank you for your time.
So, well, I think
Well, we need a,
we need a
uh,
motion. I'm
motion
gonna make
to-
a motion to refer this to the ECB.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Pat, we can get all your comments, maybe.
If you didn't get it, yeah.
Rose will send
you the package.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Would've been perfect to take your fried chicken.
So we have a subdivision, Harwitz and Brown, 156 and 152 Westlake Boulevard, lot line adjustment.
No, to the building.
The only end.
Let's take care of it.
Mike?
Applicant proposes to move a lot line approximately 5.65 feet to add 431 square feet to the property of Horowitz. A variance is required from the ZBA for the side yard for the boathouse. 15 feet is required, 5.7 feet are provided, so a 14.3-foot variance is required. Provided detail of the low wood platform on Horowitz's property. If this is a structure, a variance is required for that too, but I think it's flat. Is that correct? Up by the road? Flat. So, as long as it's flat, and we'll check that.
Pat? So really no planning issues with that, with this. The real question from us was why was this being done, explain the purpose of it, and it would be useful to have a zoning compliance table actually on the subdivision plan itself, but no significant planning.
Jamie Spillane of Hogan and Rossi, and Eric Horowitz is here as well. So in answering your question on why is this being done, these parcels were all owned by the same owner at one point in time. That was Eric's parents. So he owned both, they owned both 84 and 85, which actually were, I believe, 4 or 5 parcels, and 84 was the parcels merged, and that's why it's a bigger lot for that area. These are properties on Lake Mayaback. And the entire time, 84 was using this 5-foot area as if it was part of Lot 84. So I actually have photos that show the bushes and the fence are actually on what would be the new proposed property line. And I can send this to Rose to forward over to everyone. Here's 2 photographs. So if you see where that fence line is there, that's actually the 5-foot onto Lot 85. So this whole 5-foot area has been used in conjunction with Lot 84 for a number of years now, over 10 years. As you can see from the rendering, the frame boathouse is right on the property line currently. So it's currently non-conforming, and this lot line adjustment would make it less non-conforming. It would give that 5 additional feet. When Eric purchased the property from his parents, and the Russells had purchased the property next door, Lot 85, the understanding was that there would be a lot line adjustment applied for because of this issue with the boathouse being right on the property line. And Eric said, as Eric put it, if he wanted to paint the boathouse, if he wanted to do anything, he'd be trespassing on the neighbor's property.
And the Russells are the neighbor?
Yes.
And they're in agreement with this lot line adjustment. They're in constant contact with Eric.
Is there just a little something in writing from them indicating that they're okay with that for the file?
It's all set, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get you anything you need, and they'll be signing the plat as well. So the plan has always been to essentially somewhat fix this nonconformance by adding this additional property to Lot 84. As we discussed with Mike and Pat and Joe, we couldn't take 15 feet from the next property and have it be a lot line adjustment because that would make it more than 20% of a change in the lot of Lot 85. So this was a way of trying to assist with the problem, but the only way we could do it with the dimensions of the properties involved. The Russell and Brown, they own the property across the street. So this parcel 85, is really just gives them lake access. They eventually, I think, want to put a dock there, but there's no intent of ever building anything on that parcel besides that. And Lot 84 doesn't have any habitable buildings. It says frame cottage, but it's really a shed. There's no water, there's no septic, and then there's just the frame boathouse. With respect to the comments on the variance, we believe that we meet all code requirements for a lot line adjustment. However, after speaking with council and Pat and Mike, we understand what their position is, and if there is going to be a referral to the ZBA, we'd ask that that be made tonight, and we'd also ask that we get a positive endorsement on that referral, that this, the board is in favor of this lot line adjustment in order to assist us in moving forward.
This would have to go to this should go to the zoning board,
Yep.
right? Because we are changing. Right?
And
Pat, did you have a memo on this?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
So the only variance they need is for the boathouse, right?
That's correct, and
Or the
it's
side-
existing.
the side- it's
They're
there,
making it
but-
better.
It's better, but it still needs a variance.
That's
right,
correct.
Just to bring it up to code.
It's changed.
But
And
also,
these approved.
these lots are all governed by the rules along the lake. There's no water, sewer, or whatever allowed on these lots, so they're not changing what could happen on either lot in the future.
That's correct.
Well, the
Just a note that Rich did have a comment. He said the Putnam County Department of Health, they need approval from them.
Right, this will be filed and recorded in the county library.
Yes, we'll go to them for signature before we, of course, before the plan is signed by the board.
Any other comments?
I'd say we recommend to the zoning.
Yeah, we need a motion to refer to the zoning board?
With a positive recommendation?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we move this applicant to the zoning board with a positive recommendation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, we'll need to schedule a public hearing when it comes back, or?
So it's hard to tell when the zoning board will act on this, so
Right.
you can schedule a public hearing 2 meetings out maybe, and that,
Oh, let's just.
They won't be here until May. May is the next meeting.
yeah.
So we'll have to wait to hear from them.
We would ask,
You can schedule it, and if they're not done, if they're stuck in the zoning board, you can
Why
always
don't we do
adjourn it.
that, because I don't, I mean, it seems like it's really not an issue
Pretty
here.
simple.
We don't want to, so, probably not in 2 weeks, right? Probably in the, second meeting in May?
No,
They wouldn't make
June.
it by then, it would have to be
First
the
in
first
June.
meeting in June.
Okay.
well, we would ask that the board waive a public hearing on this.
I'm not,
The-
my view is, I personally, not too much in favor of
You gotta come back to us
waiving.
anyway, let us schedule it and let us come back.
We'll
when
try to
we-
move it along
Be
as
the 5th
well as
of
we
June.
can, but,
if you get the variances, what the board could do, if they feel, have the public hearing and the resolution the same night.
We can do that.
You're allowed to do, I mean, that has happened in the past,
Yeah,
if
so-
you feel
Yeah, let's
that
do
you would
that.
like to.
I think that, yeah.
So we can do that. When they come back to the board, we will have the approval resolution ready for them.
So it doesn't, there's no time difference.
You
So
don't
it's the
lose-
same
you don't
amount of
lose anything,
time.
but the public gets a
They're
chance
just
to-
gonna let the public put any input in.
First, June, what's the date?
Sorry, it was I think it was the 5th.
And the two people it affects are the applicants, so it's,
First Wednesday is the 5th of June,
What's the second Wednesday?
12th.
June 12th is the meeting.
yeah, because the
It's the
next,
second Wednesday of the month.
the next zoning board would be the end of May, and that would be the first
Yeah.
June meeting.
The zoning board only meets once in a month.
Yes,
And if something happens in the zoning, then you'll just let us know. and we'll
absolutely.
push it.
That's what I was thinking,
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't forget your 8x10 glossies.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Let Rose know. No minutes, we need a motion to close it.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need to stamp her map also? I'm sorry, I didn't
Yes.
mean
Oh,
to
yeah, we gotta sign and reject your orders.
on the buzzer.
Jamie?
They have to stamp that
We need
The map,
So we had, Ray made a motion, Dave seconded. Motion is adjourned. Meeting's adjourned. Let me sign this over here.
I will. You can. I will.
Feel free.